In Soldotna, and Soldotna is, we're zooming in from Denina lands. And while you're listening to us introduce ourselves, please introduce yourself in the chat. And if you know them, please state whose Indigenous lands you're calling in from, maybe what community or neighborhood you're in, and also if there's anything that you really hope to get out of this session, please feel free to drop that in the chat as well. But yeah, we're in Soldotna, and Soldotna is, one of our elders in this community laughs and says it's just that the white people misspelled it from Soldotna, which is trickles down creek, and it's a creek in the heart of our town that incubates and raises lots of baby salmon. So I like to think about that small but mighty town of Soldotna. And I grew up here in Clam Gulch and have been working for Inletkeeper for about 9 years and doing a lot of community building work. And so I'm very proud to be a part of this project and to co-present with Jeremy.
Yes, my name is Jeremy Flynn. I live in Soldotna, just a few miles from here, and have a small family farm. We kind of, I don't want to say specialize, but we're getting into poultry, produce, and mushrooms. So, and then I also manage a ranch in the area as well. And I'm from all over the place. I've lived, I think 30 different places in my life so far, which is enough. And I first moved to Alaska from Vermont when I was 15. And of course left because I thought the grass was greener in the lower 48. And it took about 20 something years to come back and realize the grass was not greener. This is the greenest grass, even though it's all white outside right now. So yeah, just proud to be a community member here. Love the community and really love this state. And I love what we're doing here. So I'm honored and proud to be part of it.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, tonight we'll try to keep it brief, maybe closer to 15 minutes, just really the history of where our compost case study and some success came from. And then we want to spend the bulk of tonight on a Q&A discussion, hopefully tying together other folks around the state together in an ongoing learning network about how we can improve and increase community-based composting across the state of Alaska. So if you want to, be involved and stay in touch, please drop your email in the chat. I'm going to kind of start at the very beginning. You could just humor me. This project really began as a pondering of how I could be of service, we could be of service to our community. Our community is, conservative and liberal, lots of different kinds of folks, but I think we have the ability to come together around our common ground is that we want to do good in our community. And there's so many wonderful things to do together. And so one of the things that we've made recently is this action kit. And our angle as a watershed organization is really to help protect the climate and the watershed, and also to help protect the people and the animals and plants in the watershed. And so it's actually like a 28-page toolkit, and I'm going to share with you this little video that kind of explains how this community compost project came about. It came about because we wanted to focus not on like policy change or just the individual action, but on this local level community change. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Kagan Koski, a student from Alaska's Kenai Peninsula. My community is working to reverse climate change. In just the past year, we've brought solar power to tons of homes in our area and started neighborhood composting. To do this, we use the overlooked superpower of middle-out change. Change can start from the bottom up with personal decisions like recycling, composting, and gardening at home. And change can start with big institutions, rewriting laws and policies from the top down. Often, we get hung up on these two areas of change. Individual actions sometimes feel too small, and top-down change sometimes takes too long. Our toolkit doesn't look at change from the top down or bottom up, but from a space too many people ignore, the middle out. Keep recycling, but look outside your home as well. Keep signing big petitions, but don't forget the power of your community. You have tremendous influence at the local level. Living where we live and being part of the community gives us all the power for meaningful climate action. Working together with our neighbors, let's unleash climate solutions from the middle out. To learn more and to download our action kit, please visit our website.
Robbie just dropped in the chat that the AFPC has a working group just for reducing food waste, and I think they're still looking for a chair. So please keep that in mind, and it's a great way for all of us to stay connected on that broader topic of food waste reduction. So this really came from 3-4 years ago. How long has it been since 2019? We were looking for ways to do community-based projects in our community. We partnered with the library because everybody likes the library. And we started having these community discussions around ways that we could actually meaningfully impact the climate in a local way. So we brought folks together strategically around energy and food and transportation. And the food conversation was the best because it was like a big potluck and everybody ate a lot of food. And we really invited strategically lots of different types of folks, elders, decision makers, elected officials, youth, and together they brainstormed solutions. And during this was sort of how the big process worked. This is a little page from the action kit. Want to give you some teasers so that you ask us about it later because we'd love to share it across the state. The action kit really helps to reframe thinking around climate change from hopeless catastrophe to empowered action. There's a lot of meeting templates for how to, bring small and big groups together to have productive solutions-based conversations, and then some robust solution selection processes, including evaluations and criterias and rubrics for how to kind of get people to come together and do a thing instead of all wanting to do their own thing. And so after this long process, which took us about 9 months in the beginning, we chose our first solution. And our first solution, here's some examples of our fabulous rubrics. We did dot voting. Everybody loves dot voting. And we also really allowed ourselves only to choose solutions that could be done in a year or two by volunteer effort, and that weren't going to happen if we didn't do something about it. So this is kind of the action kit in a nutshell. This is how we got to where we are now. I have to show you this one too. It's also only like 60 seconds long, but it talks about our solution.
Hi, I'm Heidi Che, a community volunteer from Kenai, Alaska, working with Cook Inletkeeper and my neighbors on local climate solutions. In 2020, our Solarize campaign brought 500 kilowatts of clean power to local homes and businesses, with more to come in 2021. At the same time, our community composting project kept over 24,000 pounds of food waste from the landfill, equal to 90,000 pounds of greenhouse gas from the atmosphere. This year, we started preserving peatlands, which cover only 3% of the earth, but hold twice the carbon of all the world's forests. In just 1 year, our work reduced carbon emissions by 278 tons. Download the action kit we made for you and learn how to implement local climate solutions where you live.
Narrated with the help of a small chickadee and the fabulous Heidi Che. Oh, she's the best. I'm going to kick it over to Jeremy, and he's going to chat about the first solution that we chose to do together, Community Compost. And we started 2.5 years ago, and he's helped us take it so far.
Yes, so kind of to pick up where Caitlin left off, obviously one of the first items we selected was the community compost. And that was the first thing we wanted to tackle. It seemed like it was something that we could apply resources and volunteers to and accomplish something big in about a year. And then it immediately morphed into 2 years, and now it continues to live on, which is a beautiful thing. And that's really what we want when we select these, is for them to kind of grow legs and take off on their own. And then, hopefully our kids and our kids' kids will continue this long into the future. So in 2019, that's when we embarked upon the Community Compost program, and it was all volunteer led. Cook Inletkeeper Studio was so nice and so helpful to provide a drop-off location. You can see that there on picture number 2 in the background, the buckets. And that's where, people could come and bring all of their household's food waste to and drop it off. And then from there, we would pick it up and feed chickens, which is a beautiful thing.
It's like, we try to make it easy. Get it in a nutshell. 1, 2, 3.
So simple.
Maybe.
So from there, it continued on, and again, all volunteer led, and it really started to grow. I mean, just with volunteers kind of out in the community, spreading the word and educating, we were able to sign up about 200 people, 200 different residents. And I think it was 3 or 4 different businesses, restaurants and things of that nature. And they were all happy to help and, happy to throw the white buckets in their car and drop them off at the studio when they were in town.
We basically used baby animals as a lure.
Yep.
And that's what we had so many volunteers, because they were so excited to feed local animals. We fed chickens and goats and cows, and we feed a lot of animals.
Yes. And here's actually pictures of my kids on this slide. So this is where I got involved, which was, around June of 2020. And I actually just saw that an event was being held at the Soldotna Library. And we homeschool, so my kids love events, everything, they can learn from everything. So we decided to go to it. And that's when I met all of the wonderful folks with Cook Inletkeeper, and I met the volunteers. And actually met the owner of the farm where all the compost was being taken to feed the pigs and the chickens, and was actually being composted in the field, turned into living soil. And that's when I got involved, and I was immediately pulled in and loved every second of it, and became a volunteer. And you could see all the buckets and the kids coloring on the buckets, and it's a beautiful thing. And we really started to kind of branch out into the community, perform more educational sessions, and get more people involved in the program. So from that point, actually, just to be honest, I think it was 2 weeks after I got involved. Caitlin is really good at volunteering people, or maybe I got voluntold. And next thing I know, I was sitting at a table with someone I met, what seemed like a few minutes ago, and we were writing a grant application for the USDA Community Compost grant. And
oh my God, it was that fast, wasn't it?
Yeah. And anyone who's written a grant before knows that procrastination is your enemy, yet you tend to put it off because it's such a daunting task. So we kind of burned the midnight oil, brought a bunch of people in, came up with a beautiful plan apparently, and filled out that application and submitted it. And a few months later, we got the wonderful news that our application was received and accepted. And that's when we received funding for 2 more years. And this is the first time we've actually had funding for this program. So that's really a game changer. That allows us to, buy more equipment, actually pay volunteers, which is fantastic. And it actually provides some money for a coordinator. And that is what I do. So what what those additional funds do is they help pay for fuel and everything else going around, and both educating people in our community on how they can compost at their own homes, actually educating some of the restaurants and believe it or not, local grocery stores, and just, kind of informing them that there is a better way. And believe it or not, I've been able to sign up. We have 29 coffee shops in our area. So I think per capita, we have more coffee shops than anywhere else on the planet. So therefore, they produce a lot of coffee ground waste. And now we are collecting a lot of that, which is, believe it or not, exactly what our soil needs. So since I got involved back in June of 2021, this has been a real passion, and we've actually started to look at ways to diversify the program, get more people interested and involved, both businesses and residents, and we've seen it kind of really take hold and turn into something beautiful. So this year, we will, and I can say this because I ordered the chickens myself, this program will feed hundreds of chickens, not only laying hens, but also meat birds in our community. And then all of that, all of the meat and eggs that we produce will actually stay in our community and feed the community, which literally gives me chills. That's a beautiful thing. So we don't have to import anything. We don't have to look to the lower 48 for our food. We can produce it right here on the peninsula. And we are, anything that the chickens do not eat or the pigs do not eat, we're actually constructing long 100 to 150 foot long compost windrows. We have a composting head that someone is actually donating to the cause. And that composting head goes on a skid steer or a high flow tractor. And it actually mixes that the food waste material or the compostable material, and it speeds up the composting process exponentially. In theory, we should be able to create usable compost to then mix in and integrate with our soil in 8 to 12 weeks, as opposed to months and months. So that itself is a game changer. So anyone who's tried to grow anything on the peninsula realizes our soil is, I don't want to say it's dead, but it lacks nutrients and it lacks living microbes, all of which we need to grow good, healthy, hearty food. So this is a great way for us to get those nutrients into our soil and then grow our own food.
I did want to say, so this presentation is after Jeremy and his dad, who's sitting right there at the front, hand dug 30,000 pounds of fish waste into their farmland. And so they were adding, this presentation was called Feeding the Soil to Feed Your Family. So there's so many topics that overlap. This was with Dr. Casey Matney from the Cooperative Extension Service in Kenai doing a demonstration at the Kenai Peninsula Food Bank. So just so many wonderful people in our community who have been doing work for years and years and years and continue to, and it's only because of all of us overlapping that we're able to make success. And this wasn't an overnight project. We had pitched this pilot project for the Community Compost and Food Waste Reduction Grant the year before. And so the borough had us on the radar, and Brenda Alberg from the borough administrative office was able to make it work this year. And then Scott Waterman, who is the chair of the rather newly formed Resilience and Security Commission at the Kenai Peninsula Borough level. He also helped to write that grant. And I think that was like 4, 5, 6 years ago that there was a lot of community organizing work to get that commission to be created. So, all of us are building upon the shoulders and helping each other rise up. So I just wanted to say that we're really happy to share our application or our journey. It's not a huge grant, but it did bring in $120,000 into our community that we didn't have otherwise. And I will say that I think that we got a lot of traction because we learned via the Institute for Local Self-Reliance here on the left-hand side, which I know the Alaska Food Policy Council uses a lot of that work. It's really, when it comes to food waste reduction, you start with reducing the source and then rescuing food for people and then animals, which is really what we are doing. And then teaching folks about composting and having these small distributed ways to reduce food waste. And before I started this, I really thought that having it at the landfill was the best idea, but actually it's not as efficient or effective. And we actually just got a volunteer. This photo on the right is a share waste app, which was developed in Australia. But someone just came through our doors as a volunteer because they're like, oh, you're on share waste. That's so great. So this is another tool potentially that we could use in Alaska to connect neighbors to neighbors and businesses to businesses with folks who have waste and folks who want waste. This big process has created a couple other solutions, including a couple years of Solarize, which has been really successful. And we created an action kit, and we'd love to share it with anyone. And we also have some micro grants available if folks want to use the action kit and kickstart a solution in their hood. But really this presentation is all about compost, and we'd love to learn from you about what you're thinking and doing in your community around community compost. So without further ado, we're gonna shut up, and we'd love some questions or comments from you. Thank you.
All right, so feel free to use the chat, folks, or come off the mic. You're welcome to speak. They left adequate time for discussion. So let's talk about trash.
Yeah, you can tell how much work we've done since the video was made. It was like, we've kept 24,000 pounds of compostable material out of the landfill. And then Jeremy like hand dug 30,000 pounds. And then, it just really quickly accelerated and expanded from there. So we're doing exciting things. Eliza's got a question in the chat. Can you tell us what it was like bringing in the borough as a partner? Thanks for asking, Eliza. Eliza had a big hand to play in making that entire project possible. It was tricky, but I do think all of this worked because of the trust that was shared amongst the folks who wanted this to happen. And so Eliza is part of Kenai Local Food Connection, who is a volunteer-based group that has a nonprofit status under Bridges Community Resource, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And that's a great way to get nonprofit status and thereby be eligible to be the entity that carried out the grant for the borough, because the borough is this particular grant is only available to municipalities. So we could give you our application, and in your community, you could do it again, but you would need a municipality, a borough, or a city to actually be the applicant. And that just took some time. I actually had asked Brenda the year before if we could apply for this particular grant. The municipality of Anchorage received it last year to do a study on expanding their organics collection, I think. And then also this year, oh man, I'm gonna mess up there was another rural community in Alaska who received the grant. So every year it's been about $2 million they give out to about 20 or 25 people. And so we were just thrilled that we received it, but I do think that it's possible for other communities to also receive the grant. Yeah, it does.
Yes. So to answer the next question, does it continue during the winter? Yes. Believe it or not, this year I actually used compost to heat one of our chicken coops. So it did require a little bit of labor, had to just mix it, a couple times a week, which obviously warmed me up. It was a super cold winter. So on those days where it was, below zero, I had a small, probably about a cubic yard and a half pile inside our chicken coop of just food scraps. Obviously the chickens will eat it, pick through it. And then you continue to mix it. So not only did it save on feed, but it would stay a consistent 110 to 130 degrees. So it was generating so much heat, you would walk into that chicken coop. It's just an 8x10 chicken coop, but it was so warm in there. The chickens produced eggs like summer production all the way through the winter, which was amazing. So we actually used it for heat. And then at my house, we have basically a 3-bin compost system just for our own food scraps. And as long as you mix it, believe it or not, the decomposition process continues right through the winter. That does not work if you're doing anaerobic composting. That just takes more time. But yes,
That's what I do.
composting
I'm
works.
lazy.
Yeah.
I just like pile all
Yep.
my like stuff, and then in
Yep.
the springtime I'll layer it with some leaves and other
Time
things.
becomes your
and
friend.
then
Yeah.
I will turn it. But it is pretty neat. People love to participate because they can get rid of all of their food scraps,
Yeah.
not just the veggies and stuff that you would want for a home composting process. So people will bring meat and
Yep.
like cheese, and the chickens are not picky. Our chickens are not picky. They eat everything. I think people really like that part of it. In the wintertime, the moose have never gone into my compost pile.
Yeah, I mean, the only
They they did
yeah.
eat some cabbage one time, but I was like, I mean, yeah, that's fair game.
for me, it's just eagles. We just harvested a turkey on Monday, and before I was even done, the eagles are in there eating the scraps. But the moose kind of steer clear. And then a lot of it, admittedly, is in fenced areas, so they completely stay out. But yeah, even this time of year where the moose are super hungry and borderline aggressive trying to get food, they steer clear of all of our compost bins. So
yeah. And there's some really simple tricks and
Yes.
tips too, where you can pile up a big old pile of wood chips or straw, and it's a carbon cap. And so you just dump a pile of carbon or on top of your yummies, and it keeps out most of the moose and bear. Or your moose love your compost. And we lose all the good stuff. Yeah, I would try that carbon cap where you dump like a pretty thick layer of like 6 inches or so of sawdust or leaves or finished dirt on top of your food scraps. So like pile of food scraps and then a pile of cap. That should keep them out.
yeah, or even if you have any beetle kill spruce, which unfortunately we all have, you can actually just take the limbs and keep them there as almost a lid. And if you have a bin style like pallets, you can literally just put the limbs over the top of it. It's enough of a deterrent. And then when you go to add more to it, you just pull the limbs off and almost use it as a natural lid.
Hi, I'm sorry if you already addressed this, but do you know anything about like commercial composters, and do you have any perspective on that?
So are you talking about like the massive, they're basically big agitators that, you feed with any type of, organic or, biological waste essentially, and then it continues to mix and work through and actually mix through the decomposition process? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a range of them, but yeah, basically they just like speed up the process with like drying. Like I think it does kind of like dehydration, and then also like there's like blades that like physically cuts up the food waste and whatever else is in there. Yeah.
So we've actually used 2 different methods. And one of them is kind of farm engineered. The other can actually be purchased. So that composting head that goes on a tractor or a skid steer works really, really well. It almost looks like the baby of a snowblower and a rototiller. So you would actually just dump the compost material out on the ground. And we do ours in long windrows that are like 4 feet tall and upwards of 100 feet long. And then you literally just drive the skid steer or tractor down the windrow. And it works really, really well. The other thing we did, and we're actually going to do again this year, is we have Davis Block, which is a concrete and block company. They are very, very supportive of local food and permaculture practices. So they actually put their money where their mouth is. And we bought a couple of concrete trucks from them at the ranch I manage. This was years ago. And you can actually start the concrete truck, let it idle, and just let the drum turn at idle and put compost material in there. It uses almost no fuel. One of them we actually have is converted over to biofuel. So you could burn any type of waste oil in it because it's an old diesel engine. And yeah, it just sits there and agitates. And then as soon as everything is broken down, you just reverse the drum and it will actually discharge just like you're pouring concrete. So that's an amazing process. And that you can actually do 9 cubic yards of compost at a shot, which is a substantial amount.
Is it Iva or Eva?
It's Iva.
Iva, do you have experience with that? Where do you live?
Well, I live in Anchorage. Oh, sorry, I'll turn my video on here. I live in Anchorage, but and I don't have experience with it, but I for my job, I work at Rural Cap and we have the Grow program, and we're doing like small grants with 10 different communities in rural Alaska for mostly like community garden stuff. And in Wrangell, they've been looking at like purchasing a commercial composter to like develop out their like community compost program. But it's just been kind of hard to find information on like, is this a good product? Does it you know, yeah. So
Yeah.
just
Tell
was
them to
wondering
buy
if you had
some.
any insight on that.
Tell them to buy
Chickens.
some chickens.
Yeah.
They're the best machine you can
Yep.
buy for composting.
Yeah.
Seriously. Because we actually, so the compost, we gathered all of the food waste from Kenai River Festival and Salmon Festival for multiple years. And we put them in big windrows, and we used a giant auger, like drive along, like tractor auger, basically to turn those windrows every summer. And it was, you know, I think that works like really well in some parts of the state and certainly in other parts of the country. But for us, it like really didn't stay wet enough. It didn't get hot enough. And what we ended up with was like not a great soil amendment. It like kind of got rid of our food waste, but it like didn't make something that was actually, and that was augmented with wood chips and salmon carcasses. So like it should have been real good. And it was.
It's very labor intensive.
Yeah.
You can make it happen. But if you are going to pay yourself any more than $2 an hour, it isn't worth it.
Yeah.
So long story short, what works really, really well is, you know, chickens and pigs. And believe it or not, they work in tandem. Chickens leave a semi incomplete product. They'll go through, they don't eat everything, but they eat most things because they're really just little dinosaurs. And then anything they don't leave, the pigs love. So they come right in behind it. So it's, you know, as we look at producing our own food in Alaska, that's one of our greatest hurdles, I would say, living here, is to produce food on a scalable level and make it affordable. Our largest barrier of entry is feed for any type of livestock. And our other issue is nutrients in our soil, obviously. So like what we do is we will actually take a piece of land that we plan to plant produce on, vegetables, and we will cover it in food waste 1 year and put, you know, a couple hundred chickens in there, let them process it all with pigs, let them break it all down, and they naturally rototill all that nutrient dense compost and nitrogen from feces and manure into it. And then it's ready the next year to plant and grow some amazing food. So it's a lot of this it's permaculture practices. It's understanding natural systems and then working with those natural systems, not in opposition to those systems. So you may not get exactly what you want when you want it. That's kind of a human condition, but you will get exactly what you need when you need it if you work with the system. So that's a lot of what we do.
Yeah. Does that put any other questions in your mind, Iva? Or
well, it makes me want to just connect you guys with them.
Yeah, please do.
Please do, yes.
Or just, yeah, any anyone in Alaska who's like set up a community compost program in a smaller community. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, please
Sure.
share our emails or like I'll drop maybe we should just drop our cell phones
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
chat
I'm
as
fine with
well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's easier. Is there anyone other questions or ideas, comments, things that you've heard about that are really inspiring?
Or is there anything anyone is struggling with that we could get a group discussion going and possibly help?
Hey, this is Darren. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Thank you so much for your presentation. I have to admit, I was doing some multitasking, kind of end of the day, end of the week, had to get some things out. So hopefully I'm not going to be asking you things that you already shared about. Well, I want to make sure that I just give you kudos that your animations, those are so cool. It reminds me of the Story of Stuff kind of animations from 10 plus years ago. They're so effective, and I'd love to to find out who your animator is and see if there's somebody who we could connect with for some of the rest of us.
Robbie pay you to say that?
What, really?
No, so I did them.
Oh, wow, nicely done, Caitlin. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we
That's
hope
great
that
stuff.
that whole series with the action kit can be a living, breathing resource for all Alaskans.
Great.
So yeah, check out thank you, Robbie, dropped the link to the action kit in the chat. And it's just at inletkeeper.org/action kit. And all of the videos that were animated, I will tell you my secret. It's really easy, but you can't tell anyone else.
Okay.
If you reach out to me about how those animations actually were created.
Yeah.
And also a lot of the animations are in the action kit itself, and we wanted to make it joyful and beautiful because so many of us are melancholy and overwhelmed, information overload, like the world be hard right now. And so a little bit of joy and beauty fans the flames that we all have to do work, but then actually makes us able to do the work. So
Yeah.
thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. And I do love compost as well. I mean, that's what first got me to this presentation. Here in Juneau, where I am, and I serve Southeast with cooperative extension. Yeah. We have Lisa, and so that's happening in such great ways. And I've talked with her and others here with the city and within extension about some of the opportunities for gathering heat and using heat. Using compost heat recovery systems and the pain piles of Jean Pen of the 80s has now been kind of resurrected, and so people are using aerated static piles for doing commercial composting and pulling the heat and heating, whether it be your green space or your growing space or your home or your shop or whatever. And so I don't know if you have any hot contacts in Alaska or otherwise, people who are working on that, but Art Nash, who's been presenting here at the conference as well, and I are working together to try and maybe get some pilot projects together with some of our partners here, the wonderful folks with Clinton and Haida, and to try and get some demonstration projects going on compost heat recovery. So that's one thing I'm interested in, and I'll try not to take up too much floor, but I've got some other interests as well to talk to you guys about maybe offline or later.
Yeah, please reach out. I know Eliza's on here and Tia was on an earlier presentation, but they're doing some really cool ground heat recovery in some of their hoop houses. And I know that Kenaitze Indian Tribe has 2 greenhouses now that earlier this afternoon, we presented on the Rural Energy for America program, which is basically a $20,000 grant available to small businesses to do any sort of energy efficiency, like panels or heat pumps or weatherization. And so it's kind of like tying all of these resources together to get some of these neat projects happening. We would love to brainstorm and stir some pots with you.
Great. Awesome.
One thing I will say, even though maybe it's just anecdotal, but out at the ranch over at Diamond M Ranch, there's the big barn out back, and it actually has an apartment in it, believe it or not, that's probably, let's say, 900 square feet. That apartment has radiant heat, and that radiant heat system actually reaches out into what was the old calving room. So one year, and this is a few years ago, the gentleman who owns the property, Blair, who's like the mad scientist, what they ended up doing was they actually shut the boiler down one year and moved in. It was anywhere from 5 to 6 cubic yards of compost, just food scraps. They just brought them in with the skid steer, dumped them there, and every day they would go out and stir the pile. And that pile generated so much heat just as it sat on that slab with the radiant tubing through it. All they did was turn the recirculation pump on. And the apartment in the barn, I hate to say, is not properly insulated, but it was still able to maintain about 62 to 65 degrees in there throughout the winter, just from the heat the compost was generating outside of the apartment, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, it's, free heat in Alaska is like, yes, please. Especially if you don't have to burn wood to get it. I mean, that's a win-win. So yeah, there's all between that. And I mean, you can actually create a bioreactor, which obviously is next level. I know Colorado University there in Boulder, they've had a multi-year, I think it's going on 10-year program, where they're actually trying different styles of a bioreactor, literally fed with just food scraps. And have had, they haven't all been successful, but that's the only way to figure out what works, is to try it.
Right. Great. I assume those bioreactors are anaerobic digestion that's going on, so they're producing the gas. Great. Very cool.
Darren, we would like your cat's name and your contact info in the chat, please.
All right, you got it. Yeah, she's definitely vying for attention at this point. Starlight.
Yeah, we would love to hear some more thoughts from the group of things you're hoping for or inspired by.
Well, I'm kind of, this isn't hopeful or inspiring, but I'm annoyed that we had a compost program in Anchorage where you could bring in your food scraps and get compost. Like, as much food scraps as you bring in, you get that much compost for free. And that was like awesome. And now they've changed it to you have to pay to get it picked up. It's like $5 a month, so it's pretty nominal fee. And I mean, I guess it's cool, but I think it's cool when the program can like supply compost to the community.
Yeah, you're right. It's such a labor of love.
Yes,
for sure, to turn food scraps into compost. I know Darren, Lisa in Juneau, does that program where it's like curbside. You can get some neighbors and pick it up, but it is a subscription. I think it's $20-ish a month, but it's, and then you also buy the compost and soil amendments and mulch back, but she does so much work.
Yes.
You're right. Like, to get folks in the door, our program is free, but we actually haven't made soil for distribution back to the community yet. Really, it's been to feed animals.
Yep.
And then they make some soil amendments, some rich, soil product, amendments, but it hasn't really been to make compost yet. And that is something that would be amazing, but it feels like far away.
We've done some little small case studies, and so much effort has to go into it. Where Juneau is a completely different story. It works beautifully there. It's a tighter community. We're spread out where one of the farms I volunteer on, it's an hour from my house. To go out there to grab 5 gallons of compost just isn't financially feasible, especially with fuel prices now. And it's
Yeah.
probably not environmentally the best move to drive all the way out there for that. So there's a couple of hurdles, but we are Alaskan, so you adapt and figure out a way. And, you know, one of the ways we figured out, and this will continue to evolve, is just that is, you know, feeding animals and livestock with it. And then where you feed them is key, because they will, like I said earlier, they will actually fertilize your garden space for the next year. And, you know, and it totally eliminates the cost of amendments if done properly, which is huge. Anyone who's farmed at scale realizes soil amendments next to labor are, you know, some of your highest costs. So when you look at eliminating soil amendments from your annual cost structure, yeah, it just makes your farm that much more profitable, which
Yeah.
is what we want. And that's how we grow this local food movement.
Yeah, I do really love.
Well,
I just
thank you for giving me more perspective on that. I'll be less annoyed now.
No,
harness that annoyment.
yes.
I'm
Um,
like, you should be paying me for my food
Yeah.
scraps.
Yeah.
This is gold.
It is. Vegan food, that's the gold.
Yes.
Or actually, rabbit poop is even better. But the Share Waste app and website, I dropped it in the chat. It is kind of a cool way. Like, there was more homies on it in Anchorage, and so if you are around there, or you know, you can hop on the website, and it like lets you see a map of people who are there. Like, I have waste, I have a compost pile, or chickens, bring me your waste. And so that is actually a pretty cool distributed way to maybe help that process happen, you know, without a big municipal landfill being the middleman.
Yep. Definitely.
Sharing is
Yeah, I'm gonna
caring.
check that out. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your comment.
One other thing, or actually a couple other things, if there are no other questions that I think are worth talking about. One of them is fish waste. So here on the peninsula, I'm not sure exactly where everyone's from, you know, but obviously fishing in general is such a key piece of our culture, and doing it in a responsible manner is also, you know, such a high priority and a high focus for us. So anyone who's been down here on the Kenai or down on the Kasilof during dip net season, you realize it's chaos. And, you know, thousands of fish are getting pulled out of there every single day. And quite often people are in a rush. So the waste that is left over after someone has cut the fillets off the fish, it doesn't often get thrown back into the river. If it does, it ends up on the bank, which is devastating because then the bears come down and eat it, therefore eroding the bank. Or I hate to say it, but it ends up in our landfill, which obviously fills our landfill with food waste, therefore creating less space for everything else. And it creates, you know, obviously methane, which we do not want. So one of the other things, I know Caitlin touched on it briefly, was last year we collected around 30,000 pounds of fish waste. So it was a labor intensive process, but well worth it. So what we ended up doing was I just basically took my truck, loaded up the back of the truck with all the yummy gooey fish waste from fish cleaning stations, and brought it over to our farm, and we hand dug 18-inch deep, 18-inch wide trenches, and we filled those trenches in our garden space with the fish waste. And then when we dug the trench next to it, parallel to it, we just took that soil and then buried, you know, all of the fish that we put in there. And the difference in our garden is astonishing. I mean, there are no words to describe what that did to our soil. It basically took land that could not be farmed and made it into fertile farming land. So it's a beautiful regenerative practice. So if you have the option or opportunity for that, I strongly suggest it. And then the other thing, while we have just a couple minutes here, I know we're talking about compost, but I suggest that we look at other types of organic waste. We have way too many beetle kill spruce in our area. I'm not sure how it is in the rest of the state, but it's sad to drive by and see it all. So when we actually harvest those trees and use them for saw logs at a mill or for firewood, you have all the limbs left over. And one of the things we did this past winter was we built a 450-gallon biochar kiln. And biochar and compost are, that's like, you know, family members. They kind of go hand in hand. And you can actually take all the limbs from, you know, cutting those beetle kill, cut them into the right size pieces and turn them into biochar. And then you can inoculate that biochar with your compost tea. So simply adding water to your compost, basically create a tea. So let it steep for 24 to 48 hours. You probably don't want to drink it. Some of us have by accident. And then you just take the tea, the liquid from that, and pour it over your biochar. And essentially what that does, once you add that biochar to your garden or farming space, is it creates this slow release vitamin, if you will, and feeds your soil for 3 to 5 years after you've actually placed it on that space. So you won't need to amend your garden every year. And you're not removing more nutrients than you're putting back, which is obviously the problem with monocrop farming, is you're pulling out more than you're ever putting back, which is not sustainable, as we are all learning. Mm-hmm. So that's one other thing I do throw out there, because I think it ties into composting nicely.
Yeah. Is there any other offerings? We do have about 10 minutes. So if there's anyone who's been quiet and has an offering for the group, feel free to speak up. Eliza said she did that one year too. Yeah, all the cool kids do it.
What's that?
Digging in.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'll never look at salmon the same way.
Like, no, don't throw that.
Don't think I can eat it.
Yeah, lots of maggots.
Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff.
Circle of life.
Yep.
Hey, I wanted to quickly share. I don't know if you know Tim Meyer of Bethel, the famous Bethel farmer. Yeah. So a few years ago, he shared about pulling a bunch of salmon in that had already been kind of going off a little bit or exposed to flies, and popping them in a pile. And by the time the pile heated up, it started chasing all the maggots out to the surface. And then his chickens came in and just scarfed them all up. Yeah.
Yep. Free food. Yes.
I want to do that on purpose just to experience that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Salmon maggot chicken experiment.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful, disgusting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you again, you know, whether you're raising meat birds or, you know, you have laying hens, your biggest cost is your inputs, your feed. So if you can eliminate that, it just it allows us to get that food into the community that much cheaper.
We'll have to partner on a salmon maggot chicken.
Yes.
We'll slash out compost and we'll just say salmon maggot chicken workshop.
That sounds delicious.
Eliza, do you have a question? No, okay. It's just nice to see your face. It's nice, everyone. I don't know, like no judgment, but if everyone wants to like jump on video, like we could just like look at each other's faces lovingly and be like, hey,
almost like we're in the same room.
Yeah. Art installation. Yes, salmon maggot chicken art installation. This is behind us, as you can see. The Community Action Studio does have a live gallery wall, so we'll have maggots in here soon. Oh, it's so nice to see all of your faces. Thank you.
I was really impressed. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I was really impressed when we took really big fish heads and just dug them in, you know, like this far down.
Yeah.
And like within so fast, they were just completely gone, like all the bones and everything just completely gone. And instead there was just this huge, rich layer of soil. It was really quite astonishing. And it just made me realize like how much of those fish heads are thrown away every single summer here locally, and probably in a lot of places around the state. And that's just incredible fertilizer. And we didn't have to compost it. I mean, we just put it in raw. And, you know, I know that some people feel that, you know, the composted stuff is going to be better in the long run, but I felt like as a one-time or every 5-year amendment, that it was a really great addition to the composting. Yeah, of the, the compost is necessary for the daily scraps for sure. But I did have a question. I have in the past tried to just taken up my compost out of the kitchen and just put it in the soil in my bed. And same thing, it disappears really fast. And I have had different people tell me different things about how good that is for crops. Do you guys have any opinions about that?
It depends on what you're mixing in. So believe it or
So
not,
mine were all vegetable quality
Okay.
or plant foods.
yeah. And even that comes down to, what types of plants. So, even with just a standard compost bin, if it is all food scraps, it's almost considered an incomplete compost pile, because you need, let's just say, grass clippings, leaves,
Right.
Small pieces of wood, things like that, to truly balance it out and get the nutrients you need. And almost more importantly, the microbes, or as importantly, the microbes. So things will decompose and deteriorate in soil. So you're getting some nutrients, but you're not getting the same concentration, or
Right.
spectrum of nutrients. If you're
Right.
taking it in. That's the difference.
Does someone
Mhm.
want to do like maybe an interpretive dance, salmon, maggot, chicken cycle?
I don't think that's in my skill set.
Whew, it's intense.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was, I've done both, and I mean, to be honest, I haven't really done the experiment of like doing, one over time in one
Yeah.
area, but I'm sure somebody has.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things I love to do is actually, especially at the tail end of summer and fall, is actually add, go pick mushrooms, mycorrhizal mushrooms, fungi, and go out, collect a bunch of them, and bring them back in your basket, and actually lay the caps over the top of your compost pile. And then that night, when they dump all their spores, they're essentially inoculating your compost pile. And before long, you'll see mycelium kind of woven through the pile, especially if it's in the right stage of decomposition. And then that way, when you add it to your soil, you're actually adding, not only the microbes, but you're adding that mycorrhizal network directly into your garden. And hopefully we all know how that benefits exactly what we're growing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Beautiful.
My other question is whether you guys have had any thoughts about when this grant cycle ends, and what will happen to this composting initiative. Has the borough made any noises about picking it up, or would there be any other opportunities for generating a salary for that person who's gonna, go out there and turn that compost every week or every day?
Yeah. I mean, nothing yet. Haven't heard any grumblings yet, but we're just now getting ready at the end of this month to submit our first quarterly report. So it is still in its infancy. So we shall see what happens over the next couple of years and see how this thing takes off. But a big piece of this is education, and it's surprising, how many people just don't even fully understand what composting is and how it benefits our community. So I think the more education we can kind of perform within the community, show people how it benefits their lives, their farms, and their food, that's how this thing really grows legs and lives into the future.
Yeah. And I would say also there's a lot of exciting things happening with like small children being maggots and interpretive dance. It's like going to happen. But my question to all of you is, if there's anyone or group that you think I should reach out to see if they would like to use the action kit in their community to start something like this, a compost project or something else. We do have some micro grants available via Inletkeeper to get things started. And so like, for instance, we're in our 3rd year of implementing a local solution. And as you're talking about, Eliza, there is on the docket is methane capture from the landfill. And we all know, the reason we're keeping food waste out of the landfill is that when it goes anaerobic, it produces methane. And so if instead at the landfill, we were, either capturing that landfill waste, that methane, which is natural gas, and also turning compost piles, there are so many seeds that we're planting in order to hopefully, get something big happening at the landfill, which would save us all money as taxpayers because we would be extending the life of the landfill. So there are conversations that are kind of happening, and on April 24th, there will be a conversation about landfill methane capture with the new borough landfill director. And there'll also be who was on our Resilience and Security Commission, who's excited about composting and methane capture at the landfill. He's a dojo master. What's his name? Joel, you know his name. Anyways, all the pieces are connected, and there's lots of solutions waiting to happen.
Just want to go ahead and call attention to time. It is 5:46 in case folks were heading to something else. Just want to always make sure you have time. This is cruising though, so feel free to have conversation, but this was our session.
Thank you so much, everyone.